The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, let's get started. Once again, my name is Brian Rivera with All Chicago, and welcome to Hot Topics for Data Quality Subassessments. We're talking about today this little cold Friday afternoon right here. I do see a couple familiar names on the attendee list. Thank you for coming back. And the point of these Hot Topic data quality webinars, if this is your first one you've attended for, was essentially to give providers a way of giving specific feedback and support for areas that may have come up during this previous data quality assessment. So if you are attending this webinar, then either you or your ATA or your manager has received an email from us that details specifically what areas of data collection um, that we need to address pretty much and give you an introductory, a tutorial again on these aspects of data quality with a focus around 4 specific areas. And I'll probably present for about 20 to 30 minutes on sub-assessments and then open up for Q&A. So this webinar is based on 4 topics that we have around Ben and Ruby utilization, missing information, child-only entries, and the one you're on today is on sub-assessments. So we're talking exclusively about sub-assessments, income, non-cash benefits, health insurance, and as well as mismatches when you are running our DQ report from ART, and if you see a mismatch on the DQ report, or if you are looking at a your HUD verification, you see red pretty much, and we'll talk about addressing those issues and making sure for the future that you're all set with ensuring good data quality moving forward. Okay? So what this actually entails is 3 aspects of data quality with sub-assessments. It's going to address missing data and data issues. It's going to address child-only entries, which may pop up a lot if you have a sub-assessment but have not filled out the assessment for either the head of household or the child, and also a measure in timeliness in making sure that those sub-assessments are complete after project entry. And if you are curious about running the DQ report yourself, if you're not an ATA or if you're not a manager who works with data pretty much, on our help desk, we do have instructions on running data quality report for yourself if you have access to that. Usually your ATA will run that for you, or the person who manages your data at your agency will run that for you and then disseminate that out to the staff to let them know what's going on with the data going on and everything. One thing I do want to point out is that for those of you who are not aware that All Chicago is starting up a new data quality assessment for 2019, which will make it easier for ATAs and providers to do data quality. So instead of having them run reports on their own, we run the report for them, and basically they just provide corrections, and then we can run it again on our end to make sure all those corrections are sticking with data quality. But that's moving forward in 2019. We're doing a kind of like a trial test run right now for this quarter, where ATAs and providers have received automated emails from us that detail some nifty charts and graphs on how they're doing with data quality, as well as some suggestions that they can provide for ensuring what areas they need to work on for data quality. In this case, it would be sub-assessments. So I'm going to give my spiel one more time for timeliness. Timeliness is one of those things that we always have a lot of questions on, and it's important that I bring it up in most of our webinars going on what timeliness actually is. And timeliness is a measure of the days it takes for data to be entered into HMIS. So what that means is um, the date the entry is created in Service Point minus the project entry date. So let's say the entry is created on January 10th, right? But the real project entry was January 12th, 2 days after, well, January 13th, 3 days after the fact, right? Does that fall within the 2 day guideline? No, it doesn't. It's 3 days pretty much. And we have a long article on the help desk talking about timeliness, as well as timeliness in terms of fully assessing your client when they go into your project. It depends on the project type. So for PSH providers, it's a little bit longer. For emergency shelters, since the turnover is real fast with clients, it's a little bit sooner. So entering data into Service Point through the assessments is different than timeliness in terms of project entry. Just want to put that out there for people who don't understand when we talk about timeliness. In general, timeliness mostly is the date the entry is created in Service Point minus the project entry date. So when we create an entry in Service Point, and then when they actually get entered into the project, when you actually enter them into your project, is we try to determine timeliness pretty much. And it's 2 days in general. And the same thing too as well, not just on entry, but also exit. I need to update that slide. It's also dependent on exit date too as well. So once your client exits your project, you should be able to exit them within 2 days of the actual exit, so it's reflected in Service Point accurately. One thing I want to stress is that timeliness cannot be corrected. Okay, it's recorded by the system. So if you happen to be late on checking someone into your project or checking someone out to your project, there's no way around it. It's hard stamped in the system that this person was entered the project past the timeliness window. At that point, we do strive for accuracy. So even though it's outside the 2 day window, we do recommend and we highly encourage you to at least put in as soon as you can the entry date or the exit date if your client has left. That's just to make sure that we have accurate information at all times in HMIS. And also what's important is that this information that you're entering in is also fed into our coordinated entry system. So if someone is looking for potential housing or looking for a referral or looking for entry into another project, that way we know that this project has capacity, it has room available, and that the data is up to date as soon as possible pretty much for that. So we do stress upon it that making sure that you have correct information, accurate information, and timely information at all times with HMIS. But we are here to talk about sub-assessments, right? And for sub-assessments, this will be a little bit of a review. We'll go more in depth on some areas that I think that people tend to look over when filling out sub-assessments. But sub-assessments, in a nutshell, they happen at entry, at the interim, what we call the interim assessments, or an update, pretty much, right? And definitely at exit. So for sub-assessments at entry, we want to make sure that you answer all the questions for HUD verification. We want you to document any monthly income start date and amounts. For interim, any monthly income that ends to be marked as yes as receiving source income. I'll go into that in a minute. And as for exit, we want to make sure that when you're exiting somebody out of Service Point, that if you can update any sub-assessment you can for the client and the household, with whatever information you can to make sure that as they are leaving the project, we have the most information as accurate as we can. Granted, that can't happen a lot for every agency, but we do ask that you strive to make sure that information is at least verified when you do exit a client out of Service Point. So here's a list of common sub-assessment errors. So some common ones that we see at the help desk and in all Chicago we see commonly is more of like do not have the HUD verification filled out. So before each sub-assessment, before monthly income, non-cash benefits, insurance, disability, we always have that the drop-down box at the beginning of each sub-assessment, which basically says, did this client have any disability? Is this client receiving any non-cash benefits? Is this client receiving any income? And it's supposed to be yes, no, don't know, client refused to answer. And usually that's one of the first steps to make sure that that leads towards the HUD verification, where you fill out that worksheet that says, individually which benefit or which disability condition or which non-cash benefit they have received or have not received. One thing I tell people when they're doing subassessments is that you have to answer positively in terms of no. You can't just leave it blank and assume that's a no. So if someone says to you that they are not receiving SNAP, then during the subassessment when you're filling it out, you can't leave it blank. You have to mark it as actively no HUD that they're not receiving any SNAP benefits. Mismatches is a common one. If you are doing an interim assessment, did not have income, the client didn't have any income before, but now they have income, but you forgot to change the income source to interim and exit, that little drop down, that's yes, no right there, that would cause a mismatch. So let's say you're doing an interim assessment for a client. You're doing an interim assessment for a client, and they actually have income during the interim. Let's just look right here in Service Point, my sample right here. We're looking at Theo Epstein. Pull up one of our fake information. And I'm going to do a quick interim just for this person, just for an example. And we'll do a regular update. If you look right here, I'm just updating just Theo by himself. Usually I would check for the entire household if I was updating the entire household. So make sure when you're doing interim update who you're updating. Usually you would check this all off to update the entire household, but right now I'm just going to worry about Theo right now because he's the head of household. That's before the exit date. Oh, we already exited this program, so we'll just make up a time. 3:30, 11:22. Okay. 9 a.m. There we go. So right now we're doing an interim update for Theo, and we're going to go down to a sub-assessment right here just to show what a mismatch means, right? Okay, so a mismatch would mean that, let's say that SNAP right here, 10/18/2018, $200. Let's say that benefit actually ended. We're doing an interim update. We want to update what active benefits they have or not have right now. So let's go ahead and update it. We're going to end it. We're going to end it a week after the fact, just as an example. And then we're going to end this one too as well. I'll just delete this one. Yeah. And let's just make sure this is all clear. Okay. So all these SNAP benefits you see right here in the bottom, and this one is ended as well. So the only thing that we want to check off is this one right here, other source. Let's turn that to a no because we're doing interim. We're just going to end it. There we go. Okay. So we've ended pretty much all the benefits. We have a HUD verification warning now. What that means is that they're not receiving any benefits. If we were to never write a DQ report on this right now, we would get a mismatch because this, all the benefits have ended, they're not receiving anything, would not match with this because we're saying that they have a non-cash benefit that's from any source. Yes. So we want to resolve the mismatch by looking at this first, making sure it's all up to date and correct. And if it's all up to date and correct, then we go ahead and resolve the mismatch by selecting no and then saving that sub-assessment right there. And that's a common one that we see a lot with data quality errors, that someone will go ahead and update this during the interim. They'll either end a benefit that hasn't happened, but they'll forget to change this this drop down right here for non-cash benefits. And it happens a lot with either monthly income or non-cash benefits, because that's income that's or benefits that that would be very that would come and go pretty much. Okay. Adding people after the initial entry. We talked about that a little bit, actually. A common sub-assessment error is that after you enter somebody in to service point, so let's go ahead here and use our sample client again, Theo. And close out of here. We're not going to save this interim. It's only for test purposes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enter Theo back into our shelter. But I'm only going to check Theo, though. Just going to backdate this a little bit. Okay. So if you're at this point when you're entering somebody into service point, and then you catch that they're actually more members of the household, right? You can go ahead and still add them in right now. So we're going to check off everybody. And they'll all have the same project start dates. They'll all be entered at the same time. Now they're all part of the project. And right here are the household members. So our head of household is Theo. So we fill out his sub-assessment, making sure that everything is filled out. Disabilities, monthly income, non-cash benefits, health insurance, all that stuff. Then we go back up. We make sure we fill out the ones for the dependents. That's really important. A lot of people tend to overlook filling out sub-assessments for the children. So if they don't like, same thing goes for non-cash benefits and health insurance. Okay, so we touched upon documenting children in sub-assessments, making sure that the full assessment is completed. One thing that doesn't come up as often, but when it does come up, it's good to know these kind of things, that if you're doing a sub-assessment of a child, and that child is actually receiving a non-cash benefit, or some sort of income, for whatever they're doing pretty much, you have to record that into service point somehow, right? So what you would do, though, is you would make sure you want to make sure that that for the child, that you're in the right sub-assessment for the child. So we'll make sure that we're under Leonard. And the ages are just examples, so don't pay attention too much to that. And then the monthly income, what you want to do is you want to record that this child under 18 is receiving monthly income. You would put it under here under other, and receiving source income, yes. And then you put the start date. But what would happen is that because the child is under 18, is a minor, you would record the actual income amount under the head of household. Okay? So just do it one more time. If you're recording income, and it does happen once in a while, but if you're recording income for the children are working at some sort of job or receiving money or a benefit or whatever, you would record the benefit or the income. You would mark it off as yes. You would leave monthly amount as 0, though, but then you would put it under the head of household, because it'll be the head of household who's receiving these income benefits, and not the child necessarily. And we have written on the help desk specific instructions on how to deal with those kinds of situations when you're dealing with subassessments. Another subassessment error that we have is for outreach projects. So let's say that if you have an outreach project and you want to put a date on engagement, we want to make sure that this is tracked everywhere. So on the bottom of the subassessment, down here on the bottom, we always have a date of engagement. And this is mostly done for street outreach teams, pretty much. So we want to make sure that when you're doing a sub-assessment, then make sure that that's being recorded at the same time too as well. Some other things as well that are very, very important. If you're doing an interim update, and they are still in your project for permanent supportive housing, PSH. So we're going to do, let's see if I can find one real quick. Here we go. We'll do this. Save, continue. We'll do an interim real quick. Add interim review. When you're doing a follow-up and you're doing a sub-assessment update for a client, and if they actually have a housing move-in date, then you would use this specific type of interim review, update housing move-in date. And this will actually document the housing status as well as the income from any source. We're going to flip over to a different assessment though. ESG update. Here we go. All right. And yeah. So one of those things with sub-assessments that we see that pop up with data quality sometimes is making sure that housing move-in data is filled out, as well as where the client's current location is. And then you just go to the basics of just filling out the sub-assessment again. If there's any changes, make changes to it. If there's not, leave it alone. Once again, this stuff affects CES, the coordinated entry system, and we do encourage you to have data entry within 2 days of project start. One thing that I do want to show, if I can just switch my screen real quick. So this is a scrubbed sample of a program's data quality report. All the identifying markers for each client has been removed. But this is what ETAs and providers who do data quality see when they run the actual report, right? So they see stuff like if everything's okay. If they see stuff that's like a mismatch, they'll see it for income entry mismatch. As we talked about earlier, income entry mismatch, which means that when you fill in that drop-down box of whether or not this client has income, it's yes, no, client doesn't know. But then you actually put down income during the HUD verification. This is a mismatch right here. Same thing goes for insurance at entry. It'll be a mismatch too as well. And these are errors that can be fixed really quickly as long as you know what you're looking for, pretty much. But it's very important on the when you're first entering data into the system to make sure that the data you're entering for either at project start, at the interim or an update, or at exit, that you're making sure that those drop downs match up with the HUD verifications. So if for whatever reason at interim updates that your client starts to receive income after having no income before when they first started, you make sure you flip that other drop down to yes. It's not enough just to make sure the HUD verification is okay, that the income is documented. You want to make sure that you have actively said yes, this client does have income, and so I'm going to say yes for this interim update in the drop down for monthly income. And if you know your ATAs, you feel free to ask them for this information. It's broken down by client ID, so if you're working with clients specifically, they can always forward you a copy of this report. so that you can look at the data quality for your clients and how you're doing. And on the bottom of this data quality report, we always have a key field that shows like what this means pretty much um, in terms of sub-assessments as well as other data quality fields that we're checking. Okay, let me go back. Okay, so for sub-assessments and for everything I just talked about, all of our information is located on our help desk, and feel free to write us a ticket. If you have any questions about this kind of stuff, we look forward to hearing from you and helping you resolve any problems you have. Help desk is not just relegated to just ATAs or providers. It's for anybody in our community who needs help with HMIS. We're here to help in any way we can. I'm going to leave it open for questions right now for about 10 minutes or so. Um, but if anybody has any questions, it's great. Feel free to write it here in chat, so I can pick them up and see if I can answer for you. If you don't feel comfortable answering through chat, you can feel free to go to the help desk and ask a question through there too as well. And once again, this has been Data Quality Hot Topics Sub-Assessments. I hope you found this informative and hopefully a little bit more clear on your workflow and how you're supposed to do things in HMIS and just a reminder that we're always here to help. So thank you very much for your time. I'll be around for a couple more minutes if you have any questions or anything. If not, feel free to contact me on help desk. And once again, have a great Friday afternoon. Thank you. I'll be around for about 5 more minutes. If anyone has any questions on the line, feel free to use the chat. All right. Well, thank you again for your time and everything, and have a happy Friday.